Hello, and welcome to my presentation of the Commerce Clause, the most important clause in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations, among the several states, and with the Indian tribes. Underneath the Articles of Confederation, the United States had a very weak central government. The weak central government allowed for competing economic systems amongst the states, each state able to print their own currency, create their own financial system, and this economic competition threatened the very existence of the United States as a whole. Therefore, the framers sought to use the Constitution to solve this problem through the Commerce Clause, with the main objective of the Commerce Clause being to strengthen the federal government and create a unified and general economic system. And beginning with the Marshall Court in Gibbons v. Ogden, the foundation is laid for the expansion of congressional power to regulate commerce and the expansion of the definition of interstate commerce. Throughout the 19th and into the early 20th century, we see contradictory opinions handed down by the court. For example, in cases such as Hope v. United States and Champion v. Ames, the court holds that moral ends could be achieved through economic regulation via the Commerce Clause. However, in cases such as U.S. versus E.C. Knight and Hammer v. Dagenhart, Congress's regulatory power as it relates to interstate commerce is limited as it removes manufacturing from the definition of interstate commerce, relegating manufacturing to purely interstate commerce. However, in 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression and severe economic hardship, the nation is looking for a new American contract, a new deal. FDR is elected with large Democratic majorities in the House and the Senate. However, the Supreme Court maintains its 5-4 Republican majority, and with the aid of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, 2 Democratic and 2 Republican justices, the court struck down 8 of the 10 major New Deal programs. However, after a major pressure campaign by FDR, everything turns around with the switch in time that saved 9. And that philosophical flip in the court is reflected well in Wickard v. Filburn. In 1938, Congress passes the Agricultural Adjustment Act. During the Great Depression, grain prices were experiencing extremely volatile swings. This act brought stability to the market by allowing the Secretary of Agriculture to set production limits on grains. In 1941, Roscoe Filburn, a small farmer in Ohio, he plants 23 acres and harvests 239 bushels of wheat, mostly for personal use to feed his cattle and his chickens. But this is well over the 11.1 acres and 20.1 bushels per acre allotted according to the production limit set that year. Roscoe is fined $117, about $2,200 in today's money, and he refuses to pay. His claim is that his activity is neither interstate nor intrastate commerce, and that this fine is tantamount to compelling an individual to participate in commerce. The court disagrees and rules in favor of the federal government, essentially holding that any activity, whether it has a direct or indirect impact on interstate commerce, or if it's local or interstate commerce, it doesn't matter. But if that activity has a substantial economic effect on interstate commerce, then Congress has the ability to regulate that activity. So this decision was huge, and it leads to an explosion of federal government power and an expansive interpretation of the Commerce Clause. We now entered into an era of an expansive Commerce Clause jurisprudence, and leads to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and groundbreaking decisions in cases such as Heart of Atlanta Motel and Katzenbach versus McClung, all of which were instrumental in defeating Jim Crow and segregation. In a more modern-day context, the Affordable Care Act and the decision to uphold the individual mandate in National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius, it owes its reasoning back to Wickard as well. The next 2 cases touch on lesser-known aspects of the Commerce Clause and are cases that are currently before the Supreme Court. The first is National Pork Producers Council versus Ross. This is a controversy over Proposition 12, a California law that sets standards for the raising of breeding pigs. However, California only has 1/10 of 1% of the country's breeding pigs, which means this law seeks to regulate businesses in states that have a larger population of breeding pigs, like Iowa. The National Pork Producers Council claims that this violates the Dormant Commerce Clause. And the Dormant Commerce Clause is an implicit doctrine derived from the Constitution giving Congress full authority to regulate commerce among the states. And essentially says any state law that's enacted cannot interfere with interstate commerce. The justices are conflicted, but most are showing a reluctance to rule in favor of California. They cite worries over the balkanization and our current political climate and the potentiality of retaliatory laws being passed by other states, which cuts to the heart of the purpose of the Constitution in the first place. This last case deals with Congress's authority in the regulation of Indian affairs. Holland v. Brackeen is a case currently before the Supreme Court. Oral arguments have already been heard, but the case is still undecided. The Supreme Court has long held that Congress has complete and full authority in Native American affairs. And in 1978, Congress enacted the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is an effort to address the long history of separating Native American children from their families, establishes minimum standards for removal, and a preference for Native American children to be placed with relatives or other Native families. The multiple plaintiffs exist in this lawsuit, including 3 non-Native couples who are attempting to adopt children with Native American heritage. Their claim is that this act exceeds Congress's power in Native American affairs, and it's in violation of equal protection, treating Native American children different under the law. Despite the heartbreaking details of the multiple cases, many of the justices seem unwilling to challenge precedents in this area. The justices recognize Congress's authority in this area as granted by the Constitution and are wary of the ramifications of repealing that. They cite lack of state action in this arena before, and the necessity for federal intervention to correct past wrongs in the first place. Justice Gorsuch seems particularly interested in maintaining tribal independence and authority in all arenas. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and hopefully you found it informational.